Good evening and welcome to another prayer meeting with Cottondale. My name's Chad and we're going to walk through Proverbs Chapter 2 tonight. I'm not sure that I'm going to go through the entire book of Proverbs. It's obviously very diverse and kind of scattered, and I'm sure would get somewhat repetitive. But the first couple chapters lend themselves to some distinct points, I think. So thought we just walk through chapter 2 this evening. And so as usual, before we do, why don't you go ahead and hit the pause button and read chapter 2, and you can join back with me when you're done. All right. And so of course there will be some overlap from last time, but I think there's some good things for us here. So we're just going to walk through and read it together here. Okay, let's see. All right. It says, "My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding. Yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you will seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints." All right. So let's just kind of walk through the first section here. Again, he's referring to us as his son, so you can imagine a wise father trying to teach his children not to be a fool. And if you're a parent, you can probably relate to that, because being a fool brings great heartache and pain, not just on yourself, but on your whole family. And so it's obviously important for parents to entrust wisdom to their children, and this is the way that God is entrusting wisdom to his children through the book of Proverbs. "If you'll receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom, inclining your heart to understanding, call out for insight, raise your voice for understanding, seek it like silver, search for it as hidden treasures, you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God." So if you reflect back over all those verses, what it's clearly saying, how would you summarize what it was saying? Well, it seems pretty clear, isn't it? If you want wisdom, you have to want it, right? You have to seek it, right? You have to be attentive to it. You have to incline your heart. It's something that you have to seek out, right? You call out for it, raise your voice for it. Okay, you have to seek it, search for it, right? So in other words, being wise isn't automatic, right? If it was, everybody would be wise, right? But I think it's pretty obvious not everybody is. Okay, but if we don't have wisdom naturally, then where do you get it? Well, you have to look for it. You have to seek for it. You have to go after it. You have to call after it. You have to look for it hard and find it wherever you can get it, right? It takes work. And so that's one thing when it comes to understanding biblical wisdom. If we're going to be wise, there's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts, right? You have to put in the work, put in the effort, put in the time to look for it, seek it, strive after it. And then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. And so note here that he obviously believes that true wisdom, as we talked about last time, consists in these things, right? This is true wisdom, because he equates it. If you'll seek wisdom like gold and search for it like hidden treasures, you'll find what? You'll understand what? The fear of the Lord and the knowledge of God. This is what true wisdom is. Fearing God, fearing the Lord, and knowing God. That is true wisdom. So again, when you understand it in this light, we see that it's not automatic, right? People don't fear the Lord naturally. Naturally, we don't want to honor God. Naturally, we want to satisfy ourselves, right? That's natural, right? Fearing the Lord is supernatural, right? Knowing God is supernatural. It's not something that comes automatic. We're made in God's image, but God isn't like us in hugely significant ways, right? He's different from us. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts, right? So if we want to know him, we have to seek him and search for it and call out for it and fear and honor and revere him. Why? Here's the answer, because it is the Lord who gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. So again, this harkens back to last time, but it's just the central principle that we should really reflect on and think about, and that is that wisdom comes from God. You can't, it doesn't, he's the one who gives wisdom. If you want it, you have to go to him for it, right? There's lots of people who seem wise, and sometimes we're tempted to go after them, but the Bible says that there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end leads to death, right? There's things that look good in the short term, but in the long term, say long term as in eternity, right, which is what really matters, long term, it doesn't really work out so well. But you don't know that unless you go to the Lord. So he can tell you. Lord's the only one who sees eternity, who knows how it's all going to play out. He's the only one who knows what's truly wise forever, right? You have to go to him. It's from his mouth that knowledge and understanding come, okay? He stores it up for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity. So here's another part of wisdom, right? Fearing the Lord, right? Fearing the Lord means honoring, respecting, revering God, right? That means you want to please him, you want to honor him, right? And you don't want to displease him, right? You don't want to dishonor him. Well, when you walk in fear of the Lord, you're going to walk in integrity, right? Because God doesn't like dishonesty. So wisdom, a huge part of wisdom, and what a huge part of the book of Proverbs is telling us what it means to be a person of integrity. Because if you don't walk in integrity, that's foolish, right? Because when you lie and cheat and steal and deceive people, not only will you won't get away with it for that long, and it'll cause you hurt and pain in the short term, it'll also cause you great grief in the long term, right? Because God sees what happens in secret, and he sees the thoughts and intentions of the heart. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity. Some people think, well, if I don't walk in integrity, in this little area over here, I can, make a little bit of money, make a little bit better grade, avoid this difficult situation. And they allow those temptations to keep them from having this. But it's not smart, says the Bible. It's foolish, right? Because deceit and lots of the Proverbs talk about this lead to destruction. You don't have to be afraid of what might seem like difficult consequences for walking in integrity. If you walk in integrity, God will protect you. He will shield you. He will do what is right. He guards the paths of justice and watches over the ways of his saints. And so the big point there is that if you walk in wisdom, true wisdom, fear of the Lord, knowledge of God, right? Integrity of heart, if you do that, then God guards you. God watches over you. I mean, if you think about it, what could be wiser than that? Walking in a path which God has promised that he will watch over you, guard you, keep you in that path. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. When you walk in integrity, when you walk in wisdom and fear of the Lord and knowledge of God, even though the path may seem dark, humanly speaking, it may seem foolish to walk down that path, The early Christians, and in many places all over the world, following Jesus cost them a lot. In some places, it cost them their job, cost them their families. In some cases, it cost them their lives. And it doesn't seem like a smart path, humanly speaking, but God is guarding. God is watching over the way of his saints. It might seem foolish to the world, but it's wisdom for God. And he sees it and knows it and is watching and is guarding and is leading and will get us through to something greater on the other side. But if we give in and yield, then instead of having God force, we'll have God against us. And there could hardly be anything more foolish than crossing God, right? So let's pray that God would give us an attentive ear, as it said, and a heart inclined to wisdom, right? Attentive ear and a heart inclined to wisdom. Remember, it's not automatic, right? We have to look for it. We have to seek it. Our heart, we have to incline our heart that way. We have to want it. And so just pray that the Lord will use this to help you desire true wisdom. And number 2 there is, what are some steps you're going to take to find wisdom? Remember where it said wisdom is located? It says that God, right? The Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding, right? So what's one practical thing that you can do to find wisdom? Go to God in his word, right? Read it and meditate on it. Think about it. Study it. Think about how it applies to your life. And we're going to have an example of that coming up. But what steps are you going to take to find wisdom? Maybe there's a specific situation right now where you're not exactly sure what to do. Well, have you searched the Bible and tried to find anywhere where the Bible has principles that might apply in that situation? If you seek it, it might not be obvious at first, but if you seek it and search it out and go to God's word from his mouth to find it, God might give you a wisdom, a solution, an answer that you might have never expected, that he might use to work out that situation in a way that you could have never anticipated. It might not be easy. The right decision is not always the easy decision. But if you seek it, God promises to give you wisdom. And pray for discipline and help, right? I say discipline there because it takes work, right? He says seek it. He says search it out. He says it's like finding buried treasure, right? If you want to, it's not easy finding gold. You ever watch that show where then people are digging for gold? I mean, it's like crazy. They have all these huge machines and they're just going after this little bit of gold dust, right? But they do all that work because gold is valuable. It's precious. It's worth the labor, right? It's hard work to find the gold that is the wisdom of God, but God will help you if you seek him for it. So go ahead and take some time and pray through these things and join back with me when you're done. All right, we got a long section this time, and so we're just going to maybe try to walk through it as we go. It says, if you do this, it says, then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity in every good path. Okay, so wisdom here, so if we go back, the Lord gives wisdom and so on. He stores it up, so you have to seek it. And then it says, if you do that, then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity in every good path. And so the Bible often describes life as walking down a path, right? That we can relate to that. Life is kind of like there's a path and you're walking down, but sometimes the path, there's different directions that the paths take, and you have a decision to make, right? When there's a fork in the road, you have to decide, am I going to go this way or am I going to go that way? Right? If you have wisdom, then you'll understand righteousness, justice, and equity, every good path, right? Don't you want to be able to hit a fork in the road, and because God has instructed your heart through his word and through meditation and prayer and through godly counsel from other people, you hit a fork in the road and you have confidence and you say, I know this is the way God wants me to go. It's not always obvious, but God will lead you to this if you seek it, right? It says, says, for wisdom will come into your heart, knowledge will be pleasant to your soul, discretion will watch over you, and understanding will guard you, right? So in this case, it's remember it said earlier that God would watch over you and guard you. Well, now it's discretion and understanding that will do these things, right? And so it's the same, it's talking about the same thing, because God is the one who gives understanding and discretion and wisdom, right? So so he watches over you through the means of the wisdom that he gives you, right? And so this language of watching over and guarding is important, right? Sometimes we get ourselves in situations that are in over our head, and sometimes we face challenges and enemies, right? There is the enemy, Satan, the devil, who is much more powerful than us, right? And so we need what? We need a champion. We need somebody stronger than us who is willing to watch over us, right? It's like when I'm out in public with my children and a stranger walks up, my littlest will intuitively do what? Well, my littlest child will intuitively walk over and cling to my leg, right? Because they're little, right? And the stranger might be big, and they don't know, what the deal is, what's going on, but they trust that I do, and that I will watch over her and guard her. And that's, in life, we need somebody greater than us to do that, and God promises to do that through wisdom. He'll deliver you from the way of evil, from men of perverted speech, who forsake the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perverseness of evil. Right? I think it's Isaiah who talks about the day when people will call good evil and evil good, right? And we can think of many examples of that today. And so there are people who the very thing that God calls evil, they think it's great, right? They think the very evil aspect of it is great, right? They think it's great because who knows? It satisfies some desire or craving that they have, and they think it's a great thing. And the thought there is that it says delivering you from the way of evil, from men of perverted speech, right? So the idea there is that if you walk in integrity, well, eventually you're going to find yourself at odds with people who don't, right? Because when you say that something is wrong, and you're not going to do that, it implicitly condemns those who do those things, right? They don't like, by the fact that you refuse to do it, it condemns those that do it, right? And so they don't like that. People don't like to be for it to even be implied that what they're doing is wrong. And so if you walk in integrity, eventually you will find yourself at odds with people who delight in the perverseness of evil. But what God promises is that through wisdom, he's going to protect you and guard you. Men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways, you will be delivered from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words. So this is just one example, right, of people who might try to lead you astray. It could be it could be many different things, but this is just one example, is an adulteress, right? In ancient Israel, adultery was a capital crime. Marriage is a very sacred thing to God. But reality is that in ancient times and today, there are some people, men and women, who tempt others and try to seduce others, and it's wrong and it's evil, and there can be a temptation, right? Maybe some it's sad to say, it happens all the time, right? Somebody, a husband or a wife or whatever, maybe their marriage isn't going great, and there's a nice fella, a nice lady at work, and you know, it doesn't happen overnight, but slowly over time, next thing you know, there's adultery, right? It's deceptive. Our heart is deceitful. It's wicked. So anyways, this is just one example. But see, God would spare you from that, because no good's ever going to come from that. No good is ever going to come from breaking your marriage vow. No good is ever going to come from sexual immorality and being with someone who's not your spouse. No good is ever going to come from that, and God knows that. It's going to be destructive. It destroys families. It destroys marriages. It destroys lives, right? It just and so this is just one example of that, and he's saying wisdom is going to help deliver you from that. Okay? Who forsakes the companion of her youth and the covenant of her God, right? And so he's kind of focusing on adultery here, but we see two reasons why marriage is so significant to God, right? One is the male female companionship, right? That there are some relationships that shouldn't be violated, right? If like honor, like another commandment is honor your father and your mother, right? Because there is an intimate relationship there that God has established, right? But then to dishonor your father and mother is a great evil in the sight of God. It might not be thought of today, but it is. It's a great evil in the sight of God, because it's a hugely important relationship that God has established, that to forsake that and to reject that is a grievous, terrible sin. And so there's the human relationship aspect of it, and then there's the God relationship aspect of it. Not only are we obligated to our spouses because there's that intimate personal relationship, right? The closer the relationship is that you have with someone, right? The worse it is when you violate that relationship, right? But not only is there an interpersonal relationship, there's the relationship with God. Not only are you making a promise in marriage to another person, but you're also making a promise in marriage to God, right? And adultery violates both of those promises, those relationships, both directions of that marriage relationship, both upward and horizontally towards our spouse, is violated in adultery, right? And so her house sinks down from death, her paths to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. And so, I mean, my goodness, look at that. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. In other words, there's some decisions that when you make them, they just, they can't be undone, right? It doesn't mean that God can't forgive you. God can forgive any sin that's genuinely repented of, but that doesn't mean that the consequences of the decision go away, right? God can forgive you, but sometimes the consequences of those decisions are inescapable, right? If you go down the path of adultery, or if you go down the path of whatever it is, habitual cheating, lying, stealing, deceit, greed, right? Sexual immorality of any form, okay? It doesn't matter what it is. You pick addiction. Pick your vice. Pick the thing that you struggle with, that you've been tempted to the most throughout your life, right? Whatever it is, there are decisions that once you go down that path, there's no coming back. I mean, again, it's not that God can't deliver you from those things. It's not that God can't forgive you of those things. And in many ways, I mean, we all know wonderful stories of just how God has delivered people and turned people's lives around. There ain't no doubt about that. But there are still some aspects of that past that you just can't get back. I mean, and anybody can tell you, even the person who God has forgiven and God has restored and God has delivered from that sin, they'll still tell you, I wish it had never happened in the first place, right? Because there's just some things that just you can't get back, right? And so what is he's trying to warn us, right? He's trying to warn us. that if there's a decision that you're being tempted with, a sin that you're being tempted with right now, whatever it is, maybe God just wants to tell you, don't go. It's not worth it. Looks good, may sound good, may seem easier in the short run, but there'll be some aspects of it that there's no coming back. It's not worth it. It's never worth it. Fear God, trust him instead, and he will protect you, guard you, lead you, and show you the right way to go. It might not be easy, but it is wise. And the consequences of being a fool are just far too high. So, what dangerous paths tempt you, right? It's easy to look at somebody else and say, oh, I can't believe they did that. Ooh. But the fact is we're all sinners. And if we were in their shoes, we probably would be tempted to do the same exact thing. And what tempt them might not tempt us, but something tempts us that doesn't tempt them. What are dangerous paths that tempt you? Maybe there's something right now in your life, right? What might be some means of escape? What would wisdom tell you to do, right? Paul told Timothy to flee youthful lusts. Okay, just because it uses the example of adultery, right? I knew of a guy who, in a working relationship, right, essentially like had to reorder his work life a little bit so that he was not interacting with this one coworker like he had before, right? And so that may seem a little drastic to have to do that, okay? And maybe even a little embarrassing. You might not want to admit that that's something you need to do. But this man, I would say, was very wise, and I bet his wife was really happy with the fact that he was humble enough to say, you know what, this isn't a good situation for me in my workplace, so even though it may be embarrassing, I'm going to do something about this so that I'm not tempted and so that nothing can get out of control, right? If that's if that needs to happen, hey, that is wisdom. The foolish thing to do would be to swallow up your pride, act like it's not a big deal, and end up in a situation that could ruin your life, your marriage, whatever. Everybody's different. Something tempts us. What is it that tempts you? What might be a means of escape to get rid of that? Think about it. Pray about it. Pray for God to lead you out of temptation. Isn't that interesting? One of the key things Jesus taught us to pray about in the Lord's Prayer was what? Lead us not into temptation. What is that? That's wisdom. But God also uses means to lead us not into temptation, right? If you pray, God, lead me not into temptation, one way God may do that is to give you wisdom. And then he'll give you wisdom to say, okay, this is not the best situation. I need to remove myself from this situation so I'm not tempted. What is that? That is wisdom. And that is what? That is God leading you out of temptation. So whatever it is, ask God to lead you out of it. So go ahead and take some time and pray through this and pick back up with me when you're done. All right, just a few verses to finish out here. It says, so you will walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. Okay, so this is just another one of those key principles. Okay. If you seek God, seek wisdom, right? If you don't walk down the paths of the evil, if you flee from those people and those situations which are leading you down paths that there's really no coming back from, right? If you do that, you will walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. Okay? And so that's the key, right? There's the different paths, and this is the way, this is the path that God wants you on, right? And remember, it's all, the Bible is just one whole unity, right? Jesus said what? Narrow is the gate that leads to life, and few there are that find it. But wide is the path that leads to destruction, and many are they that go down it, right? And so there's fundamentally two ways. There's the way of the good, there's the path of the righteous, and there's the way of the evil and the path of the unrighteous. The question is, which one of those directions are you going to take in your life and with every decision that you make? And then this is the principle that guides us. The upright will inhabit the land. Those with integrity will remain on it. This is a promise, right? It's a promise that will ultimately be fulfilled at the end of the age, but it's a principle that remains true. If you walk with integrity and you walk with truth and you fear the Lord and you do what is right, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, it's a principle, right? It's a proverb. Most of the time, things are going to go well with you. Most of the time, again, not all the time, but most of the time, if you treat people right with integrity, they'll treat you right. Most of the time, if you're a person who walks with God and fears Him and loves other people and serves other people, then you might come on some hard times, but guess what? Those people that you helped and those people that you served, many times they will say, man, I'm going to help him out. And there will be a way that God uses to help you in your time. In other words, and if you walk in integrity and uprightness, you're gonna dwell securely. And of course, that doesn't always happen, right? Jesus is the great example of that. No one walked more perfectly than Jesus, and He was killed. But we know ultimately everything will be fulfilled at the end of the age. Jesus, though He was cruelly and evilly treated, He will reign forever as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords in the new heavens and the new earth forever. And so will everyone who has ever walked in fear of the Lord and who honored Him and served Him with their lives. So even if God in our specific circumstance might call us to suffer for His name, suffer for righteousness' sake, which He sometimes do, that doesn't mean that this promise is invalidated. No, it'll be validated. It just might take a little bit longer time frame, but when He comes and raises the dead, the righteous will remain in the land, the new heavens and the new earth forever. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. Right? Remember, John the Baptist said that the axe is laid at the root of the tree. The tree that does not bear fruit is being ready to be cut down and thrown into the fire. Right? This is that principle. If we walk in integrity, God will preserve us. If we walk in iniquity and sin and treachery, God will root us out. Root us out of the world, root us out of His people, root us out of the new heavens and the new earth, root us out of eternity. So as we wrap up here, what does walking in the way of the good look like for you? Pray for grace to walk in it, right? Everybody's life takes them down different paths, but everybody has a right path and a wrong path, right? There is God has called you to something. God has a path of righteousness that is your path that He has granted you to walk down. What does that path look like for you? And are you walking in it? Are you walking in that path like you feel like you should? Ask God for help for that, because I know I need it, and I'm guessing you do too. And so, what does that path of righteousness look like for you? Ask God to help you walk down that path. If you got a fork in the road decision you need to make, ask Him to help you, show you the way. And then reflect on this principle. Pray that you might be led by it. Remember, because we'll be tempted. We'll always be tempted. We'll be tempted at some point to, cut a corner on our integrity, right? Because we think it'll be expedient and helpful, right? But the principle is what? The upright will inhabit the land, those with integrity will remain on it, but the wicked will be cut off from the land, the treacherous will be rooted out of it, right? So we're all going to be tempted at some point. We need to remember this principle to help us. Remember, no, it may be tempting to cut a corner on your integrity, at this point. But you know what? It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. This is always going to be true. The righteous will inherit the land. The wicked will be rooted out from it. And so it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So think about these things. Pray through it. Reflect on it a little bit. And join back with me when you're done. All right. I hope that was beneficial, helpful to you to think about some of these things. And I hope you're having a good evening and a great week. And it's been a blessing to have some good weather. We praise the Lord that the COVID cases are way, way, way down in our area right now. And looks like the Lord is just really having mercy on us. And we are anticipating just great things to come. We had a great Sunday this Sunday, and I hope to see you, if you're able to, this Sunday at 9:30 a.m. as we worship King Jesus. If there's anything we can do for you in the meantime, please let us know. Have a great week. God bless you.